Welcome, I'm Paul, this is Dave. You're watching my channel's weekly compendium, ending December 2nd, 2024. Enjoy. Case file number 1961. Written by Echoing Psyche. The case of the clock's quack, when time took a snack. I got home really late, more than an hour past midnight, so I decided to order myself a pizza around 1:55 a.m. on Just Eat. The app said it'd be delivered by 2:45 a.m. I was feeling super tired, so I set my alarm for 2:40 a.m. and took a quick nap. The alarm went off and woke me up, but there were no updates in the app. So I called the restaurant, and after they confirmed my order, I waited another 17 minutes before heading down to the front door to grab the pizza. The delivery guy handed it over, saying, "Long day, huh?" And I just laughed and said, "Yeah, tell me about it," before heading back inside. I ate my pizza and nachos while watching Dandadin, episode 4. I remember it was 3:43 on my phone when I finished. Since it was almost 4 a.m., I decided to set my alarm for at least 4 hours later. I went to the restroom. But when I checked my phone, a few minutes after finishing my business, the lock screen said 1:43. I checked Google, my analog watch, my laptop, smartwatch, tablet, even my kitchen timer. Everything said 1:43. I honestly wouldn't have thought much of it if I hadn't set the alarm and checked my phone before bed. Case file number 1962, written by Ominous Sin. Comfort in chaos where nightmares stand. Every time in the dark, I would see things, especially when I wake up. I chalked it up to sleep paralysis. Eventually, we moved from the house and I thought it would be over. However, once we arrived at the new house at night in literally a different country, I noticed some weird shape on the roof in the dark. I chalked it up to being a dish on the roof. Next morning, however, there was absolutely nothing there that could have made that shape. When I was younger, around the age of 5, along the same age as my friend who was over that day, we were all alone in the house, no parents at all. We were playing and watching our favorite cartoons, Courage the Cowardly Dog, Tom and Jerry. When suddenly, we had the urge of hunger, so we did what little kids would, we made toast. Exactly that, toast. Popped it into the toaster, made toast, put it on a plate, and as the good little kids we were, we cleaned up the mess. Pulled the toaster back under the cupboards, cleaned the toast bits off the counter, and went to lounge to finish the toast we made. Now the weird part is when we decided to put our plates away. My friend was ahead of me and stopped right at the entrance. I was confused and stood there, asking her what was wrong. There on the counter, the toaster was sitting along with the toast crumbs all over the counter. Being kids, we didn't know how or why, nor questioned it. All we did was put the plates in the sink, clean the crumbs again, put the toaster away again. We only got upset when my parents came home. My mom was upset with the toast crumbs and toaster on the counter. Never happened again after we moved to another part of the small town. Another experience. This was during my early teens, around 14, when we moved completely out of the town, and I was in my room. During this time, I was suffering social anxieties due to misdiagnosis of ADD, and being on the pills for so long, which severely degraded my social skills. I woke up in a sense on my back, a black figure hovering over me. I needed to move, but couldn't. They just stood there. I knew the small flashlight was on my nightstand. I heard it say my name before I could move and put on the light. I did research online and chalked that up again to being sleep paralysis, which was easily explainable. Now, the creepiest story. So I was 18, the grand number. I was asleep. I woke up. For some reason I was moving. I just sat up, eyes wide, moving, living, breathing awake, wide awake, and I don't know how to explain it, but there were these two things at the end of my bed. I saw it for like 2 seconds, sitting upright there, staring at them. They weren't figures. They were like these poles with some kind of material I can only compare to a large quilt. Bunched up, bloodied, tied with really strong rope akin to rebar, also bloodied, and the source of the blood. The one on the left was white, the one on the right was a sandy cardboard color. They were just there, and in a flash like a child, as I saw them, adrenaline courses through me. I laid back down faster than a bullet, throwing the blankets over my face and under the blankets. I shot out my arm, grabbed the bedside lamp, and flicked it on, just like that. Then I pulled the blankets off, and the bloodied pole things were gone. I will be honest, I was in all hell in shock. I just sat there in shock, staring quietly, before, I don't know why, I just started to cry. I just let it all out and cried. I avoided the end of my bed, and slunk over to my parents' room. Normally I wouldn't seek comfort from my mom, but my dad was in another country for work. I was legitimately sobbing ugly. She keeps asking me what was wrong, but I just said I saw something. Eventually, I calmed down. She let me go to sleep in her room, and I had to go to school that day in an hour. The thing that scares me the most is I can't find an explanation. That seriously couldn't be sleep paralysis, as I was moving constantly. And the last story, calming. I love to think about it, after that scare of the bloody poles. I woke up on my side, but I didn't move and didn't know why I woke up. I kept my eyes shut, but I could feel my blanket slowly being pulled and tucked, like I was a kid being tucked into bed, and the movements only stopped once I moved and made it clear I was awake. Did you know I have a Patreon? Over there you can get a ton of cool perks, including my content ad-free, my Stephen King carry currently, although I intend to do more, reading and reaction, and early access to my weekly and monthly compilations. Check it out in the link in the description if that interests you. Now to the stories. Case file number 1963, written by Gisher John 24. The light turned green, but fate intervened. I still think about it. I don't understand why or what happened, considering I'm, still here. In 1991, me and my then girlfriend were at a busy intersection outside of town on a state road where there is a traffic light. Four-way light, basically. We get to the road. The crossway traffic is plentiful. Wouldn't say like city traffic, but a very high traffic country and state road. We get to the light. It turns red. I stop for the red light. We see cars, semis, trucks, etc. crossing through going about 65 miles per hour. We probably wait for about 2 minutes and the light changes to green for us to go through. My intention is to go straight across the busy intersection. Because of what happens after, I remember vividly that I put my foot on the accelerator to go forward. I was a young kid then, 16. I wasn't afraid to gun it. So I accelerated what I would call almost a burnout, where I would leave tire marks. I had a Cobra at the time. Anyway, I remember accelerating, but the thing is, I did not move. 1 second later, a semi blasts through the intersection, running the red light, going probably 65. It comes inches from hitting my car. My car seemed to accelerate, but only at a crawl. Even though I remember pretty much gunning it, we just sat there in shock as a semi nearly hit me. And while we sat there, almost in the middle of the intersection, we just looked at each other, not saying anything, just in shock and knowing how lucky we were. The engine itself was not stalled. I was able to accelerate normally and go along my way. I felt lucky my car magically didn't accelerate at the inopportune time. Would have been instantly killed for sure, getting hit broadside. We talked about it the next day, but we just came to the conclusion we were supernaturally saved that day, because I can't explain it. Any other stories like this out there? Peace to all. Case file number 1964, written by Finicky Philanthropy. With a call to the darkness, I open the door. I have a friend from college, and according to him, he's had something attached to him since early childhood. Typical scary dark figure, made of blackness type of thing, that'll interfere with his life, every once in a while. Most commonly, he won't see it, but something will smash his blinds to the side suddenly, while he's in a room, or there'll be 3 or 5 loud knocks on his walls and doors. What made me believe him before I saw anything is that he did 6 years in the Navy, and has had friends before, during, and after his time that I've seen it. 2 times and 2 different people, or heard or seen its interaction, a handful of times and people. My friend has had a lot of weird crap happen to him over the years. Not necessarily related to whatever he's got going on with whatever this is. Anyways, one of the times he was telling me about this, and we'd actually called up a friend of his who'd seen it. I was pretty damn skeptical, newly a non-believer in religion, and brash. I spoke out loud and told it to attach itself to me because I thought the idea was ridiculous. And my friend was all for it, I think because no one had done that before, and he could definitely tell I thought it was bullcrap. Since then, weird things happen every once in a while. In the week directly after that, there was a case where lights kept being on when I got home. One in particular was a touch-activated lamp that was stuffed in a work-in-progress clutter that was slightly sectioned off by an improv wall. That stood out because when I eventually went to unplug the thing after a few times of that happening, it wasn't plugged in. I had something hit the front door hard when I was sitting 5 feet from it at my desk. Think a full-on kick to the door, but when I opened it, the glass and metal screen door in front of the hit door was still closed, intact, and locked. The same day, the door handle to the front door sounded like it was being interfered with or tapped. But again, the glass screen door was still shut and locked, and protecting the main door from the outside. Once, in the front door, bedroom, bathroom, work desk hallway, I'd had pretty bad dread set in. If you haven't experienced it before, you can't approximate it by having feared about something before. Dread is a really particular thing. I went about turning all the lights on in the place and closing the blinds, checking the closet, etc. And when I was in the hallway, I started hearing heavy, ragged breathing over my shoulder. Nothing was there, obviously, and I ended up leaving that night and spending it at my friend's house. At this point, it's also noteworthy to point out that very often now, when something happens to him, most of the time something will happen to me, and one of us tells the other pretty much immediately. A weird one was around March 2020. My friend was moving places and stayed at my place for a night. We slept in the same bed. Before the gay jokes, we're bros and both gay, and not attracted to each other, so there's no danger there. Anyways, I woke up in the middle of the night, which is uncommon enough, and I remember the room was weirdly dark. And I could see eyes looking into the room from outside the window at the head of the bed, and the walls of the room had weird patterns all over them. I woke him up, and by the time I did, things were more or less normal. But I didn't go back to sleep for a couple hours, and wrote what happened while I was still awake. Maybe 10 minutes after it happened. I've had more things happen since I told whatever it is to attach itself to me, and to be honest, I've got no idea. I don't do drugs, and nothing has ever happened to me when I've been drinking. I'm a skeptical, generally non-believing facts versus feelings type of guy. I don't like that whatever has happened has happened. I don't know, and I probably won't ever know. Oh well, now I look like a nut. Case file number 1965, written by Delicious Moment 2224. The haunted house's blackened soul were not in control. One day, I went to spend a weekend with some friends at another friend's house, which was in a very isolated spot in the middle of the forest, in a village in the Portuguese countryside. It was a get-together among friends, so we had some alcoholic drinks, but it was still early in the night, so no one was drunk yet. In the middle of the hangout, a friend and I decided to go for a walk in the area and take some Polaroid photos, playing a bit with the flash in the dark. The only access to my friend's house was through a dirt road, so to reach the main road, we had to walk along that dirt path, taking photos along the way. When we reached the main road, we decided to turn left and follow a street that led into a residential area. As soon as we entered that side road, we came across a house that caught both of our attention. Not because there was anything visibly wrong with it, but it felt like the aura of the house hit us both. We looked at each other and said exactly that the house had a strange energy. We ignored it and kept walking along the path with a few curves. After walking for about 30 minutes, we started seeing a familiar structure. A bridge that was very close to the entry of the side road we initially chose. We were a bit confused because it felt like we had made a 360 turn and ended up back at the starting point. With this realization, we decided to head back to the house, as the atmosphere was getting a bit strange and confusing. The next day, at the end of the day, we decided to go for another walk at night, doing the exact same route as the night before. We followed exactly the same path, passed by the mysterious house, and decided to take a photo to remember the moment. Considering that we'd taken several other photos along the way, as we moved forward, our perspective of the path seemed very different from the previous day. This time, there were no leftward curves, and it looked like there were more bushes. Then, out of nowhere, we realized that the road led to a giant asphalt slope, going up to the top of the village and into another residential area. Once again, we were confused by what was happening, and without panicking, we decided to calmly turn back and head home. When we got back to the house, we looked through all of the photos we'd taken during the walk, and to our amazement, the photo of the mysterious house was the only one that came out completely black. There could very well be a technical explanation for this, but if it was a coincidence, it was a very well planned one. For me, the strangest part of this experience was the fact that both of us, not just one, were experiencing these events and these sudden shifts in perspective. And of course, when we got back to my friend's house, we immediately told everyone what happened. But neither of us could tell the story coherently, and I'm sure they just thought we were starting to go crazy. Case file number 1966, written by Shrinky666. The pouch that puzzled. My mind did fuddle. I went shopping for my husband for a pouch he can use for his new trimmer and attachments. As I was looking through the bags that were next to the travel size items, I picked up one black bag that was fairly cheap. I opened it, looked inside, and there was white, crumpled up paper in it. Zipped it back and continued looking in a different area to see if we could find something else. When I exhausted my efforts, and have not moved this bag from my hands at all, or picked anything else up for that matter, I went to unzip the bag again, but I couldn't. It had a plastic tab holding the zipper in place so you couldn't open it. But I had just opened this same bag a few minutes earlier. I stared at the bag for a good few seconds before deciding, F it, I'm getting it. I went to my truck, took the tab off, and lo and behold, white paper. Now I'm sitting in the truck wondering what the F just happened and had to share this with everyone. Just a mind-perplexing situation. Case file number 1967, written by Bell-Eyed Shadow. Shadows in the Sun and a Little Girl's Fun. Worked at a cemetery for many years as a lawn mower and have 3 weird experiences. One of the cemeteries I worked at was an entirely flat, open space. They didn't allow headstones that stood above the ground. Everything was flat. We're talking this place was acres and acres of just grass. Well, when I would work, I would wear headphones and listen to music. Every week, without fail, there was one headstone that, when I drove near it with the lawnmower, my music would shut off. Now this was in the days of iPods, and no matter if the thing was fully charged or not, it would shut down. Guess the old man buried there didn't like my taste in music. Same cemetery, different day. I was on the very south part of the cemetery, mowing away, when I looked up and saw a man walking on the north side of the cemetery. That in of itself wasn't unusual. What was unusual was that it was 102 degrees that day, and the guy was dressed in a long black trench coat, black combat boots, black brimmed hat, and long black beard. I stopped and watched him for a minute, but he didn't seem to be looking for a headstone, just walking. I got back to work, and in one instant I was looking at the man, and the next thing he was gone. He just straight up vanished. Freaked me out. Second cemetery I worked at was much older and had the typical headstones above ground. I had stopped working for lunch and had got into the small shack that housed the bathrooms. As I'm sitting there, I can distinctly hear the voice of a little girl. As I listen, it sounds like she's playing with dolls or stuffed animals. No big deal. I walk outside just to check and see if there was anyone who needs help, and there's no one there. The place is completely empty. Walk back in the shack and I can hear her again. That one didn't freak me out too much because I think whatever it was just enjoying the warm day. Case file number 1968, written by Goofy Boots. Whispers in the stars over the forgotten hour. 4 years ago, my boyfriend took me on our first date one night after I got out of work. He drove me to a small town on Lake Michigan about 45 minutes away from the Grand Rapids, where we lived at the time, and out to a very tall sand dune. He and I packed LED hula hoops and a backpack with sweatshirts and a blanket. I brought a bottle of white wine. He had a 6-pack of his favorite beer, Founders All Day IPA. We parked at the bottom of the dune in the parking lot at around 11 p.m. It was dark and the sky was clear, so we could see tons of stars. We trekked up the dune using our phones as flashlights. Once at the top, we laid out a blanket and sat down, talking for a while. I remember turning music on my phone, and we were both dancing and spinning our LEDs, and then, absolutely nothing. The next thing I knew, I woke up, gasping for breath, at the top of the dune with him laying next to me. He asked me what I was doing, and I told him I didn't know. "What happened? What time is it?" I asked, but he didn't know. He said he didn't remember laying down, and I know that I wasn't tired when he got up there. I know I didn't lay down and fall asleep. I frantically grabbed the bottle of wine, expecting it to be empty, but it wasn't even opened. None of his beers were open either. We checked our phones and it was almost 5 in the morning. Neither of us had any recollection of what we had done for the last 5 hours. We flew down that giant dune, and when we got to his car, realized we had left the keys at the top of the dune. He told me to stay in the car, which was parked under a light, and he would be right back. I remember sitting in the passenger seat, looking into the woods, feeling and knowing something was just outside the light, watching me. He finally came down with the keys, and we started driving home in silence. He turned on music, but I couldn't hear it. I felt paralyzed until I randomly burst into tears, hyperventilating, completely inconsolable. He tried to get me to calm down, but I couldn't. I begged him to pull into a Walmart parking lot. When he asked me why, I told him I needed to be around other humans and in lights, so he did. We sat in the parking lot for an hour. Neither of us really had much to say. I think we both knew what happened to us. We're still together, but we haven't talked about it in years. Just typing this out brought tears to my eyes and gave me anxiety. Case file number 1969, written by Randonaughty. The artist's flow, but where'd the paint go? I'm a bit of an artist, or at least I try, and I'm currently painting the windows next to a friend's front door in a Halloween theme, so that she has a little more privacy when people are at the front door. This is my 3rd day on this project, almost done. Okay, here goes. So to start, I am fully sound of mind. It is 10:32 a.m. as I write this, and it happened about 5 minutes ago. I've only had a small breakfast and 1 cup of coffee. I only say this to speak to my level-headedness and awareness. I'm now at my friend's house trying to wrap up my painting. I dip my paintbrush into more paint and go to apply it to the window. There was a heavy amount of paint on the brush, and as the brush makes contact with the window, a chickpea-sized blob of navy blue paint drops. As I watch the drop leave the paintbrush, it is like everything slows down in slow motion, and I have the time to think to myself, oh crap, I'll have to clean this up. I look down to the concrete floors, and there's no splat of paint to be found. I inspected the surrounding floor myself, the window pane that I was painting, and my chair. I inspect every possible surface that this drop of paint could have conceivably and inconceivably landed on, and it is nowhere to be found. After my search was ended with inconclusive results, I said to myself, neat, and came here to share. 2 days later, there is still no paint splatter to be found. The painting has been finished. The clothes that I was wearing have been inspected. The floors have been scrubbed. I may have accidentally dropped another dollop or two of paint, which did land on the floor as expected. I'm at a loss. This is easily the most difficult to argue experience I've had, which aligns with the glitch phenomenon right before my eyes. Happy living. Case file number 1970, written by Wasabi Princess. The dials twist with an ominous mist. I live in a house with my mom and my dog. Earlier today, my mom left the house and went out. I heard her leave, so I'm now alone in the house with the dog. About 20 minutes later, I went downstairs to put some dirty clothes in the washing machine. I put the clothes and detergent in, closed the door, and turned the machine on. The machine has a dial that you turn to select your desired washing setting, then you press the on button. It definitely started washing because I heard it make the usual noises and saw the clothes start to spin in the machine. I then got my dog ready to go on a walk, left the house, locked the doors, and went to walk my dog. When I got home an hour later, my mom was still out and had not come home yet. This is 100% confirmed. The washing machine was turned off. Not in the sense that the cycle had finished, but the dial had physically been turned to the off setting. I double-checked, and the clothes inside were still soaking wet, meaning the cycle hadn't finished and the machine was turned off mid-cycle. The dial does not turn itself automatically, as it's not that type of machine. The only explanation I can think of is either someone else is or was in the house while I was out and switched it off. This is scary because only my mom and I have keys to the house, or I myself switched it off, which is not something I would have chosen to do as it was literally mid-cycle washing my clothes, and I have no memory whatsoever of doing so. Both of these are very scary to me. Obviously, the possibility of someone else being in the house is terrifying, and also the fact that I may have subconsciously performed an out-of-character action and have no memory whatsoever of doing it. Please note I am 29 female, physically healthy, although I could go to the gym a bit more often, and have never been formally diagnosed with mental health issues. Also, it's been a while since then, and I've run the machine many times, and it's always worked. Case file number 1971, written by Big Trust Come See Me. Ontario's Sorrow, and a meeting that shook my tomorrow. I was driving south from northern Ontario one year. I'm talking up near Hearst on my way to Toronto when I was at university. If anybody is unfamiliar with the area, northern Ontario is a vast spread of Canadian Shield, rocky landscape, and dense brush. A bunch of relatively small mining towns spread out all over like a 300-kilometer radius. It's kinda eerie, and Highway 11 is the most depressing stretch of highway I've ever been on. For anybody familiar with it, it's close to midnight, and I'm past Kirkland Lake, cut off, and decide to stop at the next stop and diner, whatever, to get a coffee and stretch my legs. I pull off right near Englehart, peel into the Tim Hortons, and go to the bathroom. After I come out, I grab a coffee and a snack and sit down to eat it. About 10 minutes go by, and this old lady sits down at my table. There is nobody else at the shop, apart from the ladies behind the counter. At first, she didn't say anything. Just looked at me, and she could probably tell I was a little freaked out. Finally, she just went, "Truss, it's so good to see you. How have you been? How is Dad's name and Mom's name? And has Sister's name finished up with school?" I started to shake. I was so nervous and asked her how she knew who I was and that I would be there. I'd never been there before. She got super quiet, again, just smiling, and told me they'd been keeping an eye on me. And then she left, and that was the end of it. I don't know who she was or how she knew me, but at midnight in a little bum-frick town in northern Ontario, in the middle of the night, some old lady knew my entire life. It was enough to freak me out for the next little while. Case file number 1972, written by Cynical Spunk. The Invisible Remote with a Chilling Note. I was binging the last 3 episodes of a series today. Before the last episode started, I ran to the bathroom and came right back. I went to grab my remote and it wasn't on the couch. Okay, no big deal. I fluffed out my blanket, checked between the armrests and cushions where it always falls. Behind the cushions, under the couch, nothing. I checked the bathroom, the kitchen, the other living room, outside on the patio, nothing. I'm a freak, so I FaceTimed my mom and brother, they were together, and asked them to be my second pair of eyes, as moms can find anything. True. They thought I was crazy, but I showed them with my hands, running between the cushions and checking everywhere in the house. My cushions don't come off the couch, and I can only stick maybe 4 inches of my hand in there before I'm hitting crumbs. My brother even said, "Man, that's weird." However, my mom said, "Just sit down and calm down, you'll find it." Right when she said that, I put my hand down and just like that, it was right between the cushion and the armrest. It was visible. I felt the biggest chill crawl up my spine that scared me so hard that I started ugly crying. My mom thought it was hilarious, but my brother could tell something wasn't right. He watched me stick my hand there multiple times. He knew. Case file number 1973, written by Boo Radley as Gray. Escape and Return, Lessons to Learn. I was returning home in the late afternoon on an average day. There were no other cars in the driveway, so I braced myself when I opened the door for my family's large dogs, a German Shepherd and a Chow, to run out when I opened the front door. I was thoroughly unsuccessful, feeling them both sprint past me the second the door was opened, enough for them to break out. I immediately turned and ran back to the front yard, calling for them. "Bear, Hans, come on guys, Bear, Hans, let's go, come on, we need to go in." My panic was increasing exponentially as I ran up and down the street. We lived on a kind of suburban neighborhood side road with little traffic, but close enough to busier streets, a park we frequented, and an elementary school that I urgently needed to find and return our slightly reactive, large dogs to the house. After maybe 7 minutes of frantically calling and running up and down the street, I decided to throw my purse and a few other things I was carrying in the house, grab their leashes and some treats, and head back out. My mind was racing, thinking of all the ways this could get even worse. I opened the front door to find the dogs hanging out in the living room, looking up as they had been waiting for me to come in. I froze, and my heart stopped as they ran over to greet me. I knew they had run past me. I felt their 100+ pounds of fur and muscle brush past my calves. I immediately and instinctively knew to turn around and run back after them. They were spoiled jerks who escaped when given the opportunity. They were happily lounging in the living room the whole time I was sprinting and screaming like an idiot up and down the street. Both of our guys have since passed, happened 10+ years ago. So while I still have anxiety around the experience, the universe has ensured I won't forget them. Case file number 1974, written by Desperate Worker 532. Midnight Math busted by Time Warp's Wrath. I worked that week at a barn near my house. I have only 6 kilometers or 3.7 miles to drive there. I drive a Kimco MXU 50cc, so it's really slow. That day I worked the evening shift, so my work ended late. We got our work done at 9:30 p.m. I had promised to visit my friend who lived near that barn. Everything went normally until I left my friend's house at 10 p.m. When I left, it was really dark already, Finland, so I didn't see really far. But I've driven that road so many times that I know it really well. There is another barn on my route. I always check if I can see cows in the field next to the road, from my friend's house to the point where you can see barn's lights over the fields. And thanks to those lights at the barn, you can see the whole barn is 1.5 or 0.93 miles. And for me, it takes about 2 minutes to drive that. When I left to go to that barn in 2 minutes, I drove past 2 houses really close to the road just before the barn. You can't drive past them without noticing. I checked if some cows were close to the road, and there were 2. I saw them a little bit when my headlights illuminated their white hair. Then I continued my drive normally, until 10 minutes went by, and I didn't get up to the one uphill almost immediately after the barn. Then I saw those barn lights again after one turn. I drove past those 2 houses and that barn again, and those cow fields. There were those 2 cows again. And after that, I got normally uphill, and the rest of the drive home went normally with no problems. Still really confused about what happened. I wasn't tired because my sleep schedule was so that I was up pretty late and slept for a long time. So it's not from tiredness. Case notes from 1961. The case of the clock's quack, when time took a snack. Right on, so we can discount daylight savings as the time difference was greater than an hour. Which is something I always like to do in these time events because people will always first think to daylight savings, which is the natural occurrence, if something is out of phase with time. And in effect, the only thing that can possibly fit here, given that other universes operate at the same time, it can't be quantum immortality or some transfer to a different universe, so it had to be temporal. You literally did zip back in time, with the pizza still in your stomach. If we remember, even localized to our own universe, there is no absolute time. So really to say that all universes operate at the same clock, probably isn't correct. Within the same frame of reference, they should. But maybe something happened in this different universe that shifted the relative time between them. So you were back in time in a different universe. Via quantum immortality, most likely. Case notes found 1962. Comfort in chaos, where nightmares stand. Yeah, the first encounter could have been sleep paralysis. My guess is that sleep paralysis, the fictions that are created, they may appear when there are entities around, but we fill in the gaps of what those entities are like. They're probably not all nefarious. You probably do have a ghost or had a ghost in that house, as evidenced by the toast and the toaster machine, the crumbs. Though, even that is sort of inexplicable from a spiritual perspective, because the ghost couldn't reclaim and reset all the crumbs on the counter multiple times. If you knock crumbs off the counter, try to get them all back in the same spot they were in. That's tricky business, to say the least. And why would you do that? I mean, even as a prank, it's not even very good, I'd say. So I could say an entity was involved, but it could have been beyond just a ghost. Now, time for the joke of the day. I broke up with my girlfriend because she's left-handed. It wasn't right. Case notes from 1963. The light turned green, but fate intervened. Guardian angel strikes again in the most positive of way. To literally control the acceleration rate of a car, perhaps warping the time itself within a localized bubble. So from an outside perspective, you were traveling as fast as a car could go, gunning it as you say, but you were transfixed, rooted into this little bubble of spacetime. But that's just a guess on how a guardian angel could control an entire car. Like, I don't think they're Superman. They're gifted Superman powers. There's an invisible man in front of the car just holding it. Although that would be kind of cool if that's the case. So maybe that's what I should believe. Case notes found 1964. With a call to the darkness, I opened the door. So to literally make it clear to this entity that you wanted it to attach itself to you. Whoa. Your friend was probably happy because if it's attached to you, it probably can't be attached to him. Or I guess maybe it could. Maybe it split itself in two to do it. Because you mentioned later on that whenever something happened to you, it would happen to him too. So it sounds like whatever this thing was split into two. But that should reduce its potency, if you think about it. Either way, it's good for your friend who was forever tethered and attached to this entity that just wasn't a positive force. It's the note of dread that really gets me. Again, I always say that I don't think most entities are evil, but some of them would be. It's like humans. There's only a small percentage of people that are truly malicious, sadistic. But if those die and become this entity, or convert into some deeper demon of some sort, well, you do not want those attached to you. So wherever you're at out there, never say, attach to me, to some entity in the area. That's not a good idea. It does appear that permission, consent, is a governing force of reality. So if you invite something into your home, if you consent to possession, something like that, it definitely opens the door. So don't do that. Keep it locked. Now time for the joke of the day. I got a call from school telling me that my son connected a battery to the classroom doorknob. When the teacher found out, he was shocked. When he got home, I told him he is grounded. He was regretful and did not resist. He is punished until he learns how to conduct himself. Perfect. Case found 1965. The haunted house's blackened soul were not in control. So, given the manipulation of perception or even space-time itself, I don't think this was a haunting. I think it goes beyond it. This house was out of place in time and even perhaps the universe. And if we think about it, we can transmit ourselves to different universes, not by will, but if a human can go, objects disappear all the time. They move back and forth in DOP, re-rendering, duplication, and so on. And I've asked myself many times, what is the size limitation? Is there a size limitation? What if an entire house was moved, an entire area, a neighborhood, and that could, layered on top of each other, create this effect where you go back to the same place and it's entirely different. The pathways are different even. It's almost like the staircases in Hogwarts, always shifting themselves, although in this case, extremely rarely. Case found 1966. The pouch that puzzled? My mind did fuddle. Right, so this one's such a small glitch, but would it be a de-render and re-render? When you were looking, the pouch disappeared and re-rendered as something it wasn't before, but it still had the paper in it. So it re-rendered just with this little notch on it, the plastic tab to keep it from being unzipped. That kind of fits, but outside of that, I'm just not sure. Classic glitch indeed. Case found 1967. Shadows in the sun and a little girl's fun. I like your positive attitude towards the end, and in general, I don't think most spirits are evil. I think if you're in some random cemetery, and most of them, it's going to be filled with maybe 100% good people, or just people, good and bad, but overall not a malicious spirit. It is sad to think about a little girl who might have passed away early, prematurely, extremely prematurely. If I was her, I would just be out and about trying to enjoy the day. I do wonder if these fragments, these echoes, can they enjoy the same things humans do when they're alive, like the warmth of the sun on their skin? Or can they eat? We've had a few cases where possibly spirits can eat, but what happens? Can they taste the flavors? Of course, there's no bacteria inside them, so the food can't digest. It would just be mush, undigested mush somewhere. It would pass right through them after they phase away. So I don't know about all those details, but overall, I'd say this is a wholesome story, which ghost cemeteries, you wouldn't think it's wholesome, but in my view it is. Now time for the joke of the day. My wife was blaming me for ruining her birthday. That's ridiculous. I didn't even know today was her birthday. So it looks like someone is going to join that little girl in the cemetery. Case found 1968. Whispers in the stars over the forgotten hour. This had the initial formations of a great date. Sounds cool, relaxing. But what happened after? I mean, there's a vibe that if this was a man you had just met, I would be assuming something else entirely that I can't even say. But because you've known each other for a while at this point, and obviously you were already together, it doesn't seem likely he would have done anything, so I don't think it's that. You do mention feeling a presence lurking behind the light and wanting to go back to light after driving away. Maybe this was an alien abduction. Haven't had many stories like that lately, but this has the characteristics of it. Passing out, missing time, feeling anxious, nervous after. If there's any markings on your bodies, check that. Could be evidence of it. But then, honestly, maybe you don't want to know. Because the trauma of it, yeah. I can only imagine. And I don't want to experience that. No sane person should, I think. It's kind of like the people who chase hurricanes or tornadoes just for fun, not for scientific advancement. I get the appeal in some sense, but don't do it. Don't chase after aliens. Case found 1969. The artist's flow, but where'd the paint go? This is bizarre because the cases where time slows down like this are often attributed to cases where someone would be injured. There was a case where someone was nailing something and they saw it in slow motion. Another one where I think they were opening a fridge or something was falling on them and things were slowing down. Now I think probably it is a guardian angel manipulating the time in the environment, but for the object, not for you, why would they do that for a glob of paint? That wouldn't have caused any harm to anyone. And then it wasn't even there later on, after the time went back to normal. So it was a slowdown and then complete removal? But why? For paint? I don't think this was a guardian angel. There's no sense in that. So probably an actual bug in the system. And it makes sense. If guardian angels, let's call them game developers, game masters, have this mechanism to slow down time, then perhaps that mechanism can be triggered accidentally by some error in the code or someone else that hit the wrong button in the real world. Someone fat-fingered slow down time, and then it just affected this glob of paint. Bizarre, but it fits. Okay, sounds found 1970. The dials twist with an ominous mist. Yeah, I don't actually know the washing machine you're talking about, because I only remember using washing machines that are digital. You just push a button and it registers eventually and starts. And you hear the locking mechanism click and the water come flow in. That's it. So I don't know about a washing machine that would have a knob that you have to twist and doesn't go back to that setting even after it's over. Okay. Well, whatever washing machine that is, clearly if you've run it multiple times and it didn't do it again, does suggest that some force, maybe a human, but why, intervened with it. But it's altogether weird. Why would they do that? That would be a very weird break-in. Like people who break into homes just to clean. I've heard about that happening, but I wonder how real that is. It's kind of funny, but risking a break-in entering charge just to clean a house? I mean, it is a wholesome prank, but it's very risky. And I guess not even a prank, it's just strange benevolence. In this case, it's a chaotic evil, or not even evil, chaotic neutral-ish character that breaks in and just messes with you by shutting off the washing machine and then running away. Kinda sounds like something I'd do, so maybe just a nefarious little poltergeist spirit. Now time for the joke of the day. I just broke up with my mathematician girlfriend because she was obsessed with an X. Damn variable stealing my girl. Okay, so it's from 1971. Ontario's sorrow, and a meeting that shook my tomorrow. Okay, so hold up, right? This is one of the most creepy stories I've ever read. Not initially, but towards the end, when this old lady says, "We've been watching you? What the F are you talking about? Who is we? And who the hell are you?" It sounds like alien vibes or Adjustment Bureau, something like that. Who are you? What do you want? How do you know who the hell I am? Why have you been watching me? I got no answers besides aliens, woo! Grow my hair out. Creepy as hell. Okay, so it's from 1972. The invisible remote with a chilling note. So you're absolutely right that moms can find anything. I've seen a few memes of that on Instagram where someone's in the fridge looking for an item and they ask, "Mom, can you help me?" The mom comes in and then it's just a clip, a shot of the fridge again. And the object they're looking for materializes it from thin air and the mom pulls it out. What? That wasn't there. But they always find it. It's bizarre. In this case, they didn't find it. It was you. And it was a classic case of DOP and re-render. Bizarre stuff that happens all the time. Maybe somehow moms can control when an object re-renders. They're in on it. The day they become mothers, they're read into the secret code of the universe and told, "You can't tell anyone. You can use the power, but it has to be quiet. Keep it on the down low." Okay, so it's from 1973. Escape and Return. Lessons to Learn. More shenanigans from dogs. What a shocker. But as you say, you felt them run past you. Presumably you chased after them, you saw them up ahead. There's no way that didn't happen. You didn't imagine the sensation, the rush of air as they brushed past you. That all happened. But then they were ported back at some point. Some sort of space-time anomaly. But again, why would a random anomaly port them back inside the house? Doesn't make sense unless someone was looking out for you and literally opened a portal, like Doctor Strange opening a portal with Loki, so he falls endlessly. But instead it just pops them back into the into the living room. Yeah, definitely someone has a way to control these portals out there. And I guess guardian angels do. that would be an indication of that in this case. Case notes file 1974. Midnight math busted by a time warp's wrath. Yeah, even seeing the same cows again. That would be trippy. But again, we're just back to space-time portals on a road. These are probably just laid there by the government, by aliens, by something, as a kind of test. And clearly they're not random, they're not porting people, presumably inside the Earth or out in outer space. It's really specific areas, but that also makes you a bit unnerved to drive because these are coordinate systems, I would imagine. You have starting coordinates and ending coordinates. But if one of those coordinates is off by just a little bit, you could end up just materializing inside the Earth, and your momentum is conserved. So you'd be inside the Earth, you would, inside the car, flatten into the car itself, and that would be an unfortunate experience. Or just rise above it a bit, and your car is damaged, and nasty bump from it too. So yeah, even though these portals appear not to be random, it doesn't mean that they're always safe. So it makes me wary to go on the road. Now time for the joke of the day. I accidentally changed the car's GPS voice to male. Now it says, "It's around here somewhere. Keep driving." We don't ask for directions. We'll figure it out. Like the video, subscribe, hit the bell. Kinetic Symphony, signing off.